Yeah, please do. So, look, this is probably going to be relatively light touch compared to some of the other presentations you've seen, largely because Barnet is still a very new customer with Jadu, to an extent. Although we have been around before for a very brief period back in the day, which I'll touch on in a little bit. That's the idea that I'm going to go through. What I normally do at conferences is that I see these like well-polished presentations come on, and they've got an introduction slide about themselves. So you're going to see a pretty big picture of me. Trade description act, I don't look like that anymore. That's two reasons. One, I've got a baby, and two, I work at Barnet. And so I spend quite a lot of time in the pub. But that's me, 13 years experience across all those areas there. But I've been at Barnet since October 23. Having a great time, even though it's stressful. Barnet's an interesting place, which I think probably every single person in a local authority would say. That bottom bullet point is probably the most important one. I know we're apolitical, but that's a really important thing in terms of the context of Barnet and where we are from a political perspective and from a technological perspective. But yeah, anyone who is in a London borough, who knows London boroughs, know that they have a very strong separation between wealth and deprivation, and we are an incredibly diverse borough, and we're just pipped to the post of being largest by population by Croydon. Well done, Croydon. So what does that mean for us? So this is where the political bit comes in. So in 2013 and probably a little bit before, Barnet, as some of you may know, sold its soul a little bit to the concept of outsourcing, which stretched from everything from bin collection through to libraries, all the way into tech. A lot of that's been coming back over time from the Capita contract. One of the things that was sold was any control over its website and CMS, which we just bought into Jadu at the time. Capita came in and went, no. So sorry again, Suraj. Anyway, the conscious decoupling piece essentially is, as much like Chris Martin and Gwyneth Paltrow, we know that we're going to have a divorce with Capita at some point, and that's looming probably after the next election. What that means is that we have to turn off all of their systems, all of their established infrastructure, and build our own. This is where the political bit comes in. So obviously, under a previous Conservative administration, the idea of outsourcing all your services to a massive multinational like Capita was a good idea. The incoming Labour administration, which for the first time ever was a majority in Barnet, decided that wasn't what they wanted to do, and to really separate themselves from what had gone before, they've gone hardcore the other way. So they would like to bring everything in. Pragmatism is probably going to prevail, and we'll probably work out what some of those work packages look like over the next few months. But I think certainly for us, one of the big key issues is that right now, a lot of the stuff that we want to put onto Jadu is controlled by Capita. And a youthful digital function, obviously not in terms of my age, but in terms of the team's age, we are not particularly mature, and that is in every way, but we're not particularly mature in terms of our governance and our structure across the organisation. So it's an interesting place to try and do digital and try and do business with products like Jadu across services, because services until now have been very much of the view that they control these things themselves, and therefore there's no need for the centre to have any input. So what is it that we've done with Jadu? So, it was very clear from the off that we weren't selecting a supplier. We were selecting a supplier that could act as our partner. And what we mean by that is we wanted someone who we could develop in conjunction with, as opposed to be subjected to as you would potentially with another supplier. And so we agreed we were going to do all of our reported function, which in the wisdom of previous incumbents decided that we put our entire reported function under one process, with a process tree that was vast, like the biggest thing I've ever seen. And we decided that we want to pick all that out, and we wanted to do individual processes, as you should. using the Jadu system. The rude awakening bit was working out that that process tree was quite as big as we didn't realise. So we'd like to have done all the reporting in our first phase. That probably would have taken about a decade in the way that we were working. The other thing that we had a bit of rude awakening with was, and this is potentially something that colleagues have experienced themselves, legacy systems aren't particularly well defined and they aren't particularly well mapped. And so when Rian and Steve were rightly asking for process maps and just general view on how that system and how that process worked, we sort of looked at each other a bit confused and had to go and work that out pretty quickly, which involves some business analysis on our side, as well as Capita colleagues being involved. Again, that partnership bit is really important here. So I think we're absolutely clear that the best bit about having the relationship we have with Jadu is that we can have those open conversations. It's not always easy. We butt heads sometimes. Sorry, Steve. But ultimately, it's a conversation that we can have in a way that we wouldn't be able to have with a supplier where there was a very fixed delivery and a very fixed outcome to the transactional nature of that business. I've talked a little bit about services already, and I'm already running over time, so I will crack on very quick. So this is the first. This is probably some of the outcomes that we've seen, and you'll have noted from the pictures, and they are both pictures of Barnet, that we focus on potholes because Barnet is the pothole capital of the world. And fly tipping, which obviously are two massive processes in street scenes and highways. Those were really successful, but these are the first time that we've really put those together in an end-to-end way. So I suppose, yes, you could report a pothole in Barnet and it would go through to a system, but where that system exactly chucked the request out was often a bit of a mystery, and it depended on the type of pothole or type of fly tipping, which was probably, all best plans and everything, but it didn't really work in terms of the user, and certainly there was no potential to update that user on when a process was completed, which led to lots of complaints, or rather follow-ups that really could have been dealt with by an automated system. Big part for us is that, I heard Bartek mentioned quite a lot today, we've just procured Bartek for waste management in street scene, so we've been future-proofing the fly tipping process at least, to ensure that when that comes in, we can integrate that seamlessly, amongst other things. And obviously the good thing is reduction in officer time being wasted, although we've not really quantified that, which is why I've not committed a number to that screen. And the best bit about it probably is in the service appetite sense is we're now seeing services that would never have engaged with us from the centre, asking us about what they can do to contact residents. And that could be as simple as a form to email, and I'm not going to tell people no. If it means proving the piece and proving that the system works, I'll quite happily build a workflow that ends up in an email to an inbox, because for the first time, those people are engaging in Jadu and engaging with the centre, with Jadu, in a way they would never have done before, and they'd have probably just got themselves confused and ended up with a very complicated structure in terms of their contact. What's next? For the rest to report it. Might not take a decade now, we've got it sorted out a bit. We've got until October 25 to get all of our old CRM, CMS forms and processes off, so we can turn that off, otherwise it's going to cost us several £100,000 and maybe some more, and we don't really have that money. So that's a really tight deadline. Steve's boring eyes into me, I can see him from there, that it's a tough deadline to meet, but ultimately it's one that we think we can meet with the combination of a second procurement with our Jadu colleagues, and also, some pretty hard work from our side. And I suppose learning lessons for us is about what can we do better, and probably being more ready for Jadu coming in is probably fair. Again, Steve's looking at me. And that bottom bit, again, I said, we're talking about doing things like MASH reporting forms and foster care requests and things like that. The idea of doing this in Barnet, I cannot tell you how far away that would have been even 2 years ago. These are old school areas that know it, and they also know that they don't need to engage with the digital centre, because until 2024, the digital centre didn't exist at Barnet. So, yeah, interesting what we're going to do next. That's a quantum computer, apparently. I Googled that. And that's AI. Apparently that's what Barnet will look like in 2050. Best of luck. So I think this is what we'd like. I think from what I've seen today, all of this stuff's been done here. So I'm probably just going to come along and speak to you all and nick it all, to be honest. My account is something that we've had at Barnet, again, in a sort of half semi-completed state that's never quite done what it should have done, and that's quite true of a lot of the stuff we've had. And so this is what we want to do. Members' inquiries, I know there's a few colleagues in the room that have been looking at that. It's something that we're really interested in, not least because our members' inquiry system is also tied to Capita's CRM, so that's going to be turned off relatively soon. I've probably been quite negative about Capita. It's a bit unfair. I mean, they do what they do, and they do it well for a fee. For us, it's been how do we free ourselves of that? Not in a way that I want to get as far away from as possible. I don't care. But what I do want to do is to be able to demonstrate that we can own that end-to-end process, which again in Barnet has just never been done in the centre in a way that many of you would assume is just normal. So, there's another picture of my face coming up, which is quite funny. But first of all, here's Katia, who's there, over there, and colleagues in reflective high-vis, hence reflections. That's good enough for me, thank you. Woo! Brilliant. That first bullet point is probably the most accurate one, not being remotely ready, and I'm not sure how we could have been, but I must say that that partnership piece again has given us, built those relationships with Jadu colleagues, and that professional services piece from Jadu has been so helpful. Whether or not we asked them for it, we got it, which is really good, because it meant that actually some of those gaps that we never would have filled were done, and it meant we could deliver. Again, Steve wants to kill me about it, but we're still here. We got a team in, 3 of them there, mid-project. That's hard enough in itself. I'm sure some of you have done that before in a project where you've not had a team and you have. It takes a little bit of working out, especially if they're new to the organisation. But the highlight is we delivered on time, on budget-ish, and we've used it as a real basis. So I must admit that's pretty helpful. I won't touch on this slide too much because this is getting really arrogant. I'm back on the screen. I think it's been a real eye-opener for me, and colleagues that have been in local government for years will laugh at this. I didn't realise just how much you could do in local government within certain parameters. Central government's really strict. Like, I can't procure that, can't do that, can't do that. Local government's really interesting. So the innovation, the ability to innovate is there with all the other parameters that you have to look after. Doing some old-fashioned business analysis, then work and requirements and stuff, would rather not done that, but there you are. And just bringing user-centred design to Barnet. That's my problem with my final point. And again, I've gone on about Barnet being a little bit, I said behind the times, not backwards. I think Barnet's an interesting place in that it's got a bit of a Stockholm syndrome. Everyone says that they don't want to use old school services and systems and legacy, and Capita often is banded around as a negative. But as soon as you say to them, well, let's do something new, like use Jadu, their first response is, but Capita do that for me. So that's 99% of the battle. But I think it's been a really positive experience. I think thank you to all of the characters we've worked with in Jadu, because they've been excellent, and I hope they continue to be excellent as the team, as phase 2 develops. I think that professional services bit has been such a massive help to us. If we'd have had to go out to a partner, I'm sure they would have done the job very well, but I think the intimate knowledge of Jadu, and more importantly, the intimate knowledge of local authorities, was something that really sort of helped our project along in a way that I didn't realise it before, but I certainly realise it now, we definitely needed. So that's it. I'll turn my face off now because you've had enough looking at me here and there. You can always talk to me if you want, and I will definitely be talking to you. Cheers, I suppose.